program, I am going to discuss about psychopathology of human behavior. The aspect which we are going to emphasize in this particular program will be disorders of affect and disorders of memory. These will be the two major disorders, or what you call as signs and symptoms in psychiatric illness will be discussed. Let us take first disorders of affect. Affect and mood are used interchangeably, and you also know that the individual has feelings, emotions, or sometimes we say that the mood of the person is disturbed. All these terms correlate to affect. When we talk about the disorders of affect, it depends upon what inner feelings the individual has at that particular moment or at that particular situation to react to. For example, a person may feel very happy about a situation, or a person may feel sad. Person may also like to show the emotions, but is not able to show the emotion adequately to a particular situation or to a particular circumstance. In that case, we say that the affect is affected. So when we talk about the disorders of affect, we talk about the happy moods when there is disorders, and when there are disorders when the person is not very happy, or we call it as sad. So in other words, we say that the disorders of affect can be classified as pleasurable affect, unpleasurable affect, and some of the classification which we cannot put under pleasurable and unpleasurable affect, we call it as other effects. So let's take one by one. We'll first start with pleasurable affect. There are four kinds of pleasurable affect disorder. One is euphoria, another is elation, then we have exaltation, and the last one is ecstasy. We like to describe one by one because it has got important connotation in case of psychiatric illness in the ward when you are nursing the patients with mental illness. The first one is euphoria. In this, the patient has a feeling of sense of well-being. Now this sense of well-being every one of us has, but in case of hypomanic patient, you will find that this sense of well-being is constant, and it remains no matter whatever problems are there or whatever sad things are happening in the ward, patient will still maintain the feeling of happiness or sense of well-being. So this constant sense of well-being is the one which is called as euphoria, and this is what is to be made note of, that in case of hypomanic patient, the patients are always having this constant feeling of well-being. In case of elation, which is second disorder under pleasurable affective disorder or affect disorder, in case of elation there will be a joyous feeling in the patient. Patient will be happy, but along with that you will find the physical activities and biological activities will be increased. For example, again take a patient with hypomania. You will find the patient is very happy, very gay, and cutting jokes here and there, talking to the people, and also patient is walking up and down. He has got endless energy and is not able to sit down and concentrate on activities. So that means in elation, along with the happy mood, there is also increase of physical as well as biological activities. The third kind of disorder under pleasurable affect disorder is exaltation, and in this you find that there is happiness in the mood, or mood is very gay and happy. Also you will find there is increased activity, that means physical activity and biological activity. The other component added in this is that there is disorganization of ego functioning in this person, and also you will find the patient has got a grandiosity feeling. That means he feels that I am a lord of the world, or I am a king of a particular community, or I am a leader of a particular community. So in exaltation, the other important aspect is grandiosity is accompanied with the other factors which are present in elation. The fourth kind of disorder under pleasurable affect is ecstasy. In ecstasy, you find that the patient has got very peaceful kind of feeling. A religious bent is there. I mean, the religious feeling is always there in patients with ecstasy. And again, this you will find in patients who are gone into schizophrenia and they withdraw totally. They may have these kinds of feeling. And the important point in this is that there will be religious connotation attached to the mood of the patient, and patient will be peaceful, very calm and quiet. So these are some of the disorders in pleasurable affect. Then we have unpleasurable affect. In unpleasurable affect, there are two major things. One is depression, and I think you all have read it in your books that unpleasurable affect is one of the major disorder in psychiatric illness. And in depression you find the patient has a feeling of lassitude, withdrawal, does not interact with anybody, does not socialize, does not eat properly, and also has insomnia. The depression can be of a mild degree, moderate as well as severe, but in this you will find there will be basic three major symptoms presented by the patient. We call it as triad in depression. One is there will be decreased activity, the emotion also will be very low, and the speech also will be very, very soft. So these are the three symptoms which are predominant in case of depression. The other kind of unpleasurable disorder is, we call it as grief or mourning. We should remember that grief or mourning is different than depression. Whenever there is a loss in the life of patient, for example, a death of very near and dear person, it's very normal for the person to go into grief or mourning. Now, in case of depression, the depression continues, but grief or mourning are time limited. After some time you find that the person starts facing the stressful situation, uses a coping mechanism, and is tries to adjust to whatever loss has occurred in his or her life. So grief and mourning are self-limiting. The person may not need any treatment at all, whereas depression would require the intervention of therapy or the treatment. But when the grief or mourning continues for a longer period, we may call it as depression, which again becomes a mental illness or psychiatric disorder. So these are the two major disorders we will call under unpleasurable affect. Now the third kind of affect disorders are other affect we call, because we cannot classify them under pleasurable affect and unpleasurable affect. Under that, if we take the classification, we will find that the patient will have anxiety, and anxiety is also a feeling. In this, the patient will be very restless, and there will be fear of unknown. Person does not know what is going on or what is the situation to which he is becoming restless. There will be physical changes, there will be physiological changes, and also psychological characteristics will be very predominant in anxiety. For example, in psychological cases, the person will have apprehension, very restless. In physiological or physical, you will find the patient may have perspiration, patient may feel like going to toilet again and again, or there will be palpitation, the respiration rate will be very high. So this we can put as physical and physiological changes. In case of anxiety, there will be psychological as well as physical and physiological changes. We must not forget to differentiate it from fear. In fear, the patient will have the fear or will be having the restlessness towards a real object or real situation. Whereas in anxiety, the person will not be knowing the object or situation, but restlessness will still persist. So this is a major difference between the fear and anxiety. Anxiety is first symptom in case of neurotic disorders, and also it is seen in many of the psychotic disorders also. Now, other than anxiety, the other kind of affect disorders would be panic. Panic is many times used interchangeably and not very appropriately by people instead of using anxiety. But in panic, the person will be extremely restless, extreme tension will be there, will not be able to cope up with the problems. Also, there will be disorganization of ego functioning. Now, you know, when there is disorganization of ego functioning, the reality testing will be affected and the person will not be able to make right kind of decision to handle the situation. So that is why people, often use don't get panic. Now, panic is not the interchangeable term, or it is not a common term. We have to use it with quite a care, and you'll find again this will be seen in patients with neurotic disorders. The other kind of disorder is apathy. As the word indicates, A stands for absence, and apathy is when the patient does not show any kind of emotion on face. That means the patient does not have the happiness on his face or the sadness. If the moment or the event is demanding happiness, the person has no emotion at all on the face. We call it as mask-like face. When we say mask-like, no matter whatever mask you put to the person's face, the reaction will be none other than what is there on the mask. And this is what is a symptom presented by many of the schizophrenic patients. And Behaviour has discussed apathy as one of the primary symptoms of schizophrenia. The other disorder is ambivalence. In case of ambivalence, you will find the patient will have two contradictory kind of emotions or feelings at a time for the same person or object. It's very strange, but it does happen, because a child who loves his father, adores his father because father is smart, father is helpful, father is big, father can do anything on the earth because child is very small. But we also have a feeling of hatred because father can beat him and he cannot beat back. Father can get angry and he cannot get angry because father is significant. So that love and hate feeling at a time the child may have for his father or even for mother. So these kind of things, these kind of contradictory emotion when occur at a time within one person for the same another person or the object, same object or same person, we call it as ambivalence. Ambivalence is also a very predominant disorder of affect in case of schizophrenic patients. The other is inappropriate affect. In inappropriate affect, as the word indicates, that means the reaction of the patient or emotion shown by the patient is not appropriate to the situation which is demanding either happiness or sadness. For example, if you find the whole environment is very happy, very jolly, everybody is enjoying the party, and this particular person is not able to react accordingly. So we say that the affect is inappropriate, or patient may start crying, or patient may feel very sad, sit in the corner and does not talk to anybody. We say that the affect is not appropriate. Similarly, if the situation demands sadness, this particular patient may laugh in a situation. For example, I still remember that particular student could not react very normally or very appropriately to a situation. I will call it as that she was having schizophrenia, but a young student does not know how to react, because always we tell the nursing students to keep smiling in the ward with whatever the situation may be, no matter how much you are under stress. So a young 16-year-old student, first year student, what would she know that how she has to differentiate her emotion? So she came running to me and she says that patient is gasping. So she smiled and said that. And then I said, you don't have to smile for this, and just wait here in the duty room, I'll go and see the patient. So I went and saw the patient. When I came back, I took her to the room where over a cup of tea, all of us we sat down, and I explained her that in a situation where it is demanded that you have to be sad, you don't have to keep smiling artificially, and it is not required, it is not appropriate. Now that's a situation where knowledge is to be given to the student, and the student develops skill to cope up with the stressful situation appropriately. But in case of schizophrenic patient, especially in hebephilic schizophrenia, you will find the patient will always have a silly smile on the face even though the other patient has died in the ward. So this we call it as inappropriate affect. The other kind of disorder, depersonalization. In depersonalization, the patient may have a feeling that his brain is turning into cow dung, or the part of the body is totally missing. So this depersonalization is a feeling. It's not that it is not there, but it is a feeling in the patient, and patient feels sad about it. You may find this again in patients with catatonic schizophrenia. So what so far I have discussed is some of the disorders of affect. Under that we classified pleasurable affect, unpleasurable affect, and other affect. And under other affect I have discussed that apathy and ambivalence is also the primary symptoms of schizophrenia, which is described by Bleuler. Now the other part of this particular program which I thought we can discuss is disorders of memory. When we talk about memory, there are certain aspects or certain steps which are followed to memorize something. That is, you pay attention to a particular area and you perceive that particular aspect either through visual perception or through hearing or by writing. So we call it as that a particular thing is attended to. Then retain that. We try to memorize and retain that, and whenever there is a situation we can recall it. So there are certain steps when we say that memory has taken place. When we are able to reproduce or recall something repeatedly, that means that has been retained in our memory. When we talk about memory, we also say that immediate, recent and remote memory of the individual should be tested. For example, you provide the words in pairs to a client or to a patient, like hair and comb, or brush and teeth, or you may say computer and office, or television and program, and then you tell the person to recall immediately whatever you have said, or give one particular word and tell the person to say another pair. So when the person is able to say it out, we say immediate memory is present or immediate memory is intact. Then we have the recent memory. In recent memory, whatever has happened within 24 hours, we tell the patient to try to recall that and tell, to ensure that the recent memory is present. For example, who came to visit you yesterday evening, or what did you have yesterday night, something like that which has got 24 hours gap, and patient is able to say it, and then we say recent memory is present. If the recent memory is not present, we say the recent memory is affected. Then there is remote memory. As the word connotes, remote means something which has happened, long back. You try to ask a question related to that. Very good example are when is your birthday, or when did you get married, when did you pick up your first job, or when was your child born, first child born. You see, these are some of the things where the person has to remember for some time and wait and then recall back, and then we say remote memory is present or not present according to the answer which patient has given. So these are some of the disorders. The other disorder in memory are hypomnesia. In case of hypomnesia, we find that some of the patient are able to recall some of the events or some of the situations which they have never thought of they could ever recall. For example, in a hypomanic patient or functional disorder patient, you will find that if they had learned few words of English, now they can use so many words of English which they had just heard about. It really astonishes the family members, and it becomes a very amazing situation for people, because we should not forget that these were some of the hidden desires of the patient, and patients was not able to manage that particular situation, and During the disorder of mania, this hypomnesia may be present and the patient is able to recall some of the things which he or she had heard. We call it as hypomnesia. The other kind of disorder is amnesia, and you know that A is absence. Amnesia occurs in organic brain disorder also. When you know that there is head injury, there may be amnesia present, or it may occur in the psychological disorder or functional disorders also. In schizophrenia, when the patient presents the symptoms of amnesia, we make a note of it, because then we have to find out what is that painful situation due to which the patient is having marked amnesia. The other kind of disorder is paramnesia. In paramnesia, the patient tries to pick up the stories or pick up the points from here and there and tries to make it as a story form. Like in confabulation, they try to bring the points together and see that the points are discussed in a form of story which nobody else may be able to make out, but this particular patient has a lot of meaning in case of paramnesia. In case of amnesia, let me go back. There may be complete amnesia, which is very rare in people. There may be partial amnesia, which we call it as retrograde or anterograde amnesia. You see, retrograde amnesia is that the patient is not able to recall some of the past experiences. In case of anterograde amnesia, the patient is able to recall all the past events, but is not able to recall the immediate events or very recent events which have occurred. Whereas in case of circumscribed kind of amnesia, you find that the patient is able to recall all other events, but a particular event and related to that particular event is not able to recall. For example, what happened while your wife left you? Suppose you ask this question from a patient. The patient can tell you everything else at home, when he got married, how many children he has, but is not able to recall when it happened and what were the situations in which it happened, because it is so painful for the patient to remember that event, that all the situations related to the wife, even the relatives, he may not be able to recall. So these are the parts of amnesia I thought you come across quite frequently in the ward, and you must know what are these various kinds of amnesia. So we have discussed the disorders of memory. In the ward, you will find lot many patients who will be coming with these kinds of disorders, and you should be able to differentiate whether it is organic kind of disorder in the patient or it is functional kind of disorders. And you know what we are meaning by functional kind of disorder is basically the psychotic disorders.